and Chris Talk Movies.
Hey, hello, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Chris Ferry, and of course, this is my co-host.
And my name is Chris Huddleston.
And today we are both very excited to be talking to you about Guillermo del Toro's spooky film, Crimson Peak. Okay, do you have a synopsis for us, Monsieur Huddleston?
I do. So Crimson Peak is what year did it come out? I should have known this ahead of time. It is 2015, written and directed by Guillermo del Toro, and it stars Mia Wasikowska, Jessica Chastain, Tim Hiddleston, some other people. And the IMDb synopsis is, in the aftermath of a family tragedy, an aspiring author is torn between love for her childhood friend and the temptation of a mysterious outsider. Trying to escape the ghosts of her past, she is swept away to a house that breathes, bleeds, and remembers. Dun, dun, dun.
That's well written.
Yeah, it's not exactly what I would say it's
the
about.
Tone of the deal, but yeah, that's accurate. Now you had seen this and recommended that we do it. I had not seen it before.
Yeah, I saw it in the theater and then had not visited it since. I don't believe. But so why don't you go ahead, since you were new to this film? Maybe say what you thought this was going to be versus what it is. Partly. I think it's interesting.
What I thought it was going to be, just for anybody who's joining us for the first time, perhaps spoilers, we spoil these movies. So if you don't want to find out what happens in Crimson Peak, then please don't listen.
And you can watch this on Netflix. If you have Netflix, you won't have to watch.
Can't watch this on Netflix.
No.
You can
Crimson
watch Crimson Peak
can.
on Netflix.
One day, maybe we'll be on Netflix, and they'll
Hey.
just not ever have to work again. Just
You can watch us on YouTube, and you
Yes.
can listen to us as a podcast. So you just got so many choices.
If anyone works for Netflix and they would like to have a movie review show on Netflix, we are available.
It's a novel idea. Two middle-aged white guys talking about movies.
I mean, we'll do it cheap too. I don't know about you, Chris, but I would do it cheap.
I'd do it. I wouldn't do it I am doing it for free. So I don't know what I'm talking about. I'd do it on Netflix for cheap.
Yes.
Anywho, what did I expect? I expected something absolutely hair-raising. And what I got in retrospect was probably, I should have predicted it more from Guillermo del Toro. What I did get was the shivers a lot, like, that kind of flesh crawling. Oh no! Like I get that a lot. So there's a lot of ghosts in this. It's basically a ghost movie. And the ghosts are very scary. And at some points I actually thought too over the top. Does that let me unpack that a little bit. So the first time we see a ghost, it's her remembering. She says like ghosts are real. And I remember the first time I saw a ghost and her mother had just died. And her mother's ghost shows up to say, beware of Crimson Peak, which as a little girl, she doesn't have any idea what that portends. But her mother's terrifying, right? This is her mother. So and yes, it's Victorian. So she's in this huge shroud of like, they have big shoulders and, big poofy dress shoulders and veils. But her mother's face is like all decomposed. And, it's like, it's like, okay, she's going to be dressed as a Victorian ghost. Check. Okay, we got that. All in black now. Check. Got it. Veil. Can't really see her face. Totally. Got it. I want her face to be like really desiccated, but in like a scary way. Okay. We can do that. You're the boss. I want her fingers to be really crazy long, like inhumanly long and kind of wave around and weird. All right. And then I want little like spurts of smoke to be coming off of her. Like she's just got shot with some sort of, phantasmal Tommy gun or something. okay. I mean, it just feels like, how many ornaments can you put on this Christmas tree? So I love Guillermo del Toro. I love his design. I just thought that the ghost effects were trying so hard to be horrifying that they overshot the mark a little bit sometimes. The sets are gorgeous. The performances are great. I love Tom Hiddleston. I like everybody I saw in this was good. It was a little stiff, but then the period in which it's shot is supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, by the end, there's a twist. I guess we should just should we get to that, or should we just address it?
Sure.
I mean, the girl marries Tom Hiddleston as an outsider. Daddy doesn't like him. They move back to his place, which is bonkers. It's like apparently their family fortune was based on mining red clay, which is great for making bricks in the industrial age. Hey, terrific. But the whole house is built on basically this. I mean, it is blood red clay, and it oozes blood red
down the walls and through the floorboards.
Right. Yeah. The house is sinking. So you step too hard in the middle floorboard, and like this, basically it looks like blood comes oozing up between the floorboard. And he takes her back to his crazy house, which is full of ghosts. And the ghosts seem overtly malicious, and they're terrifying to her. And he's got a sister who is hostile. That's not a sharp enough word for what her sister is. His sister is. But it turns out that the ghosts are the ghosts of the murdered previous mother. And I think there's a couple of other ghosts involved. And it's the sister that's the crazy one who comes after you she's trying to poison her, and then she comes after her with a knife. And there's nowhere you say, well, why didn't she run? There's really nowhere to go. Like they're
in the middle
miles
of nowhere,
from town, and the town is not much of a town. And she's weak because she's been poisoned. So as she figures out what's going on, it's a huge old creaky, spooky house with lots of locked doors. It's very gothic feeling. And I thought it was good, but I felt it was a little long.
It's almost 2 hours. Yeah.
I got a little tired. I'm like, okay, we get it. It's his sister. So, and then it goes on then she unlocks another door, and you're like, yeah, okay. So the sister killed everyone. So can we? Nope.
Yeah.
No, there's more to unpack.
To flesh the story out a little bit more. So Tom Hiddleston and Jessica Chastain are con artists who they've run this con at least once before, maybe more, where
definitely more, because they've been to Glasgow and all of the places.
That's right. But they get at least what they've done with Mia Wasikowska and a previous person is they, in this case, he marries her and pretends to be in love with her so he can get her family fortune. They murder her father, or the sister murders the father, and they want to get the family fortune. But the kind of little bit of the twist is this time he legitimately falls in love with her. So even though he's this bad person, he's not quite as bad as what the sister is. She kind of controls things, and they're having this incestuous relationship. But as far as the stiffness, it definitely takes a while to get going. I think me watching the second time, I just wanted to fast forward to when they get to the house. There's about maybe 30 minutes or so of setup before they actually get to the house and things really get spooky, But what's really impressive about this movie to me is, you mentioned the sets, and obviously this house is so weird and it's falling apart that, there's a view of the house behind you. And, obviously you can't imagine someone in real life living in the house where this stuff is oozing down the walls and everything.
There's a hole in the ceiling.
There's a hole in the ceiling.
A huge gaping. It's like the place is literally falling apart.
But it's a bit like, and I don't remember having this feeling the first time around, but the second time I definitely got in some different ways vibes of The Shining. And, because The Shining's a ghost story and there's snow in this, not snow all the time, but especially in that this house seems so much like a real place that you could go and see, but it's not. They built the house for the movie, much like the Overlook in The Shining. And it's just like, these sets are unbelievable. It's just incredible. I think however much this movie cost, all the money is on screen. And I think even if
the costumes are gorgeous too.
The costumes are gorgeous. And as you said, the acting is really great. And just Tom Hiddleston is one of these actors where I would just watch him in anything. He's just really great. I mean, everybody's good in this, but I think he's especially fantastic. And I think for maybe when this movie came out, I think there was some disappointment because I think some people thought this was going to be a really hardcore horror film, and it's not. It's a ghost story, it's a mystery, and it's a bit of a love story. There's some really violent scenes in this and some blood. But I think even if you maybe aren't totally sucked in by the story, the visuals in this are so fantastic. I said last week so I saw this in the theater, and I said that I feel like this is one of the best looking films that I've ever seen in a theater. And so this is one of these that you don't want to watch on your phone or an iPad or something like this. Watch it on the biggest screen that, if you have a big TV in your house, because it just looks so great. And the color, the blood red is such a good contrast with the darkness of the house, but there's a lot of greens and blues. I mean, he just is such a visual filmmaker. So even if maybe, and I think with the actors in this, and like you said, it's Victorian, so it feels a bit stiff. I think with lesser actors, some of this would come off as really corny, but because the actors are good and his direction is so good, it doesn't really feel corny. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it doesn't feel corny to me either. Regarding the acting, and Jessica Chastain is terrific.
She's really creepy.
I kept thinking that they must have wanted to get Eva Green and couldn't, because they just felt like they did everything they could to make Jessica Chastain come off as Eva Green, like the long black hair, and there's even something she's sort of doing with her eyes and expressions that was evocative of Eva Green to me, and her accent is fine, but is a little distracting sometimes, Yeah,
Eva Green would have been. I never thought about that before, but she would have killed it in this role as well.
At first, I was like, "Oh, it's Eva." I'm like, "Wait, that's not Eva." I was like, "Is that Jessica Chastain?" And then I was like, "Oh man, well, she's famously a redhead, so it's interesting to see them
with the dark hair,
go the other direction with that." Play against that. I mean, red would have worked. I guess not with a blonde ingenue in that house. She needed to be the Raven evil sister or whatever. Right. But I thought, red clay, red hair, red house.
Maybe it would be too
much.
You talked about the design with the ghosts with the long fingers and all that. And that's very much a design choice that Guillermo del Toro seems to do a lot. How familiar have you watched most of his other movies?
I don't know about the most, but I've seen several of his other films.
Did you see Pan's Labyrinth?
Yes.
So, you've got the creature with the eyes on his hands, and he has those long fingers, and so that seems to be, but like you said, I'm thinking of the ghost where like you said, it's a little over to the top. Like there's the one that comes up from the floor and like its hands are and it's crawling along, and half of its body's gone and everything.
Yeah, and the ghosts all look like the mutilated bodies of the people, right?
Yeah.
So it's like her mother's ghost, the day they bury her mother's ghost looked like a corpse that's been rotting in the sun for months. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, she's just what? So if they all look like, why does she just look like she did when she died?
The same thing.
But these other ones their heads are all caved in and half of their face is missing, and you're like, they wouldn't just look like them, like their spirit looks like their body. I mean,
even the same thing with Tom Hiddleston. So spoiler alert, he dies, and his ghost appears to her, and he, looks like he's been dead for a while. He's not all super decayed, but he looks older.
Yeah. So
yeah.
But I mean, there isn't a, there's not a ghost rule book on how it's supposed
That's
to
true.
work. I just felt like my one real criticism was the effects, which I was really looking forward to in a Guillermo del Toro movie. They pushed everything else was pushed a little bit, was amped up a little bit. The Victorian style, the opulence, the mannerisms, all of this was punched up a little bit, but the effects, the creature effects, were pushed to the nth degree, and I thought maybe further than the rest of the movie. They stood out in that way to me.
And it's interesting because he has done a lot of practical effects in his movies. So I think of Pan's Labyrinth, where that was all people in costumes. I don't know that there was much CGI in that. And the same thing with the Hellboy movies. It was actually Ron Perlman and all kinds of makeup and everything. So it's interesting that I remember at the time I watched some making of, and I think it seems more CGI on screen than what it actually was. I think they did some practical effects and then it was sort of CGI over it. But I think it would have been just as good or better if it just would have been people in costumes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he spent all his money on building the house.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Or because they're ghosts, he figured, I don't know. I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know what goes on in his mind.
No. He's the guy is so for me, he is I'm predisposed to like just about anything that he does. He's one of those directors for me that I just like his style so much that Edgar Wright is a director that I feel that way about. Darren Aronofsky, there's a few others where for me, a trailer could just be, black screen, white text, the new movie by Guillermo del Toro, and I'm going to go see it.
Sure.
The only one that I didn't like was Pacific Rim. I don't know if you saw that one.
Yeah, I did.
But I thought it was terrible.
Yeah.
But other than that, Pan's Labyrinth I loved. The
Pacific Rim was just it was kaiju, right? It was just a bunch of
giant
sea monsters.
And it was that thing of I know what they were trying to do, but it was that, to me, like intentionally cheesy, where everybody talks with the tough guy voice, and
yeah,
it was just, I get it that it's a giant monsters and giant robots, that's corny, but I don't know. It was
like a comic book movie, but for anime, it's like, how do we, you know what I mean? But I don't think that mainstream culture has anime or manga. I don't even know what terms I'm talking about, but Japanese animation, and not just the style, but the genre of the giant monster, of which Godzilla is one, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that's as firmly embedded in the American psyche as, Superman and Batman and Spider-Man. So I don't know that people registered as, oh, this is a comic book movie, but it's like, it's an anime, but with real life and CGI. So that style of like, all right, fall in,
Yeah.
form up, and the giant robots, or just the idea of people piloting giant robots against giant monsters is a old trope in Japanese animation. But
oh, sure.
maybe people, I don't know, didn't know. They're like, what are we looking at here?
People, I mean, it was popular enough that it got a sequel, which I never watched.
I think it did well globally, or I mean,
Yeah.
you're right, it did well globally enough. But I think in the US, people were kind of like, what's this? I don't know. I don't speak for the entire US movie going population.
Yeah, exactly. And then what is I'm drawing a blank on the title where the woman falls in love with the creature from the Black Lagoon, more or less. What's that one? That won Best Picture.
Oh, right. Fish eggs. I don't know. I don't remember what that was called. I never saw that, actually.
Oh, you should watch that.
I heard it was great.
Yeah.
It's basically the guy from Hellboy, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, he's
in the movie. Is it literally the same character, or is it just like he just really loved that design? And
yeah, he loved that design. It's the same actor. He played some of the ghosts or all of the ghosts in this as well. So he uses him over and over again. But The Shape of Water. I don't know why I couldn't think of the title, but we could do that one on the show sometime as well, because that was, that's an interesting movie as well. So here's the interesting thing.
Speaking of Aronofsky, too, you haven't watched the Moses one either. I can't believe you haven't seen the Moses one.
Noah.
Yeah. That's what I meant. Moses.
Yeah, we could do that sometime here, because that's the only one that I've not seen.
Next time you have 8 hours to watch a movie. It's not that long, but it's a big movie. You're like, God almighty, biblical.
Yeah, I'm sure I'd like it, because he is a director that.
Yeah, you'd like it.
Yeah, I really have loved everything that he's done. There's nothing that he's done that I disliked. So
there'll be some stuff that we can talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But it is biblical in scope, and the performances are like big sledgehammer. I mean, it's the Old Testament, so he really unleashes it, so to speak.
And that's the thing it's not typically, I think that's why I've kind of stayed away from it. It's not, biblical epics are not something that I'm all that interested in, but I know his spin is going to be a little bit different than, somebody else doing a biblical epic.
Yes. It's the 10 Commandments. It ain't.
That's the interesting thing with him. Again, he's a director where, and I'm sure I've said this before on the show, but The Wrestler, I don't want to watch a movie about a wrestler. It's great. Black Swan, I don't really want to watch a movie about ballet. It's great. So he's just like, his next movie is going to be about a guy working in a bakery. Doesn't sound interesting, but it's Darren Aronofsky, so I don't like it.
I was the same way going to Black Swan. I'm like, everybody was like, oh, Black Swan. And it's kind of like, I'll get around to watching it sometime. I wasn't excited about it. And I like Natalie Portman. I like Aronofsky. Just the idea of it's about a ballerina. I just didn't get excited about it. We watched it for this show, and I was like, man, that was really, really great. I mean, not for all moods. I'm not always in the mood to watch Black Swan.
It's not something you just want to watch over and over again.
But I'm glad I saw it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have learned to never, with him, and I'm sure at some point, David Fincher used to be a director, which is like, oh, if David Fincher makes a movie, I'm going to go and see it. And then he's had some things that I haven't been all that interested in. But until Darren Aronofsky does a movie that I really dislike, it's just going to be like, well, I don't know that it's something I want to see, but I'm going to watch it because it's Darren Aronofsky.
Yes.
So back to this. What else do you want to say about Crimson Peak? Would you recommend this to people?
I would. I think if it was a friend asking me, I'd say, I mean, maybe it was a little tired last night. I just felt a little slow to me. I do think if I'd have gone to the theater to see it, it would have been a superior viewing experience. That is a big, big scope.
Did you watch it on a large TV, or did you watch it?
I have a pretty big screen TV.
Okay.
It's bigger than anything I've had before. So that was the closest to a theatrical experience I was going to get, but I didn't like watch it on my phone or on my laptop or anything like that.
It would lose a lot.
Yeah, I can see that, because the world is absolutely immersive, and it's gorgeous, and it's atmospheric, and it's creepy. There's a part of me that felt like he could have told the same story in a tight hour 30.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just kind of kept it snapping along, because I don't think it was as mysterious as maybe he thought it was being.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe I'm just jaded. I don't know. I figured out what was going on pretty quick. Like, the sister is openly hostile from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Like, what's her problem? And it just doesn't change, you know? And so then you find out, oh, it's her. And you're like, yeah. I mean,
I would have definitely, I don't know if you feel the same, but I think they could have cut 20 minutes out of the stuff with the dad and everything. I mean, I guess it's setting it up so you'll feel bad when the dad gets murdered. I don't know, but it's almost a different movie where it's all these little interactions between her and her father, and there's this do music.
The first half is this kind of drawing room drama, Victorian drawing, and then a dashing young Englishman comes, and they waltz, and he's charming, and everybody's taken with him. The father's suspicious. Yeah. And then he has a kind of a PI go dig up dirt on him, finds out what's going on, and then he calls the guy's bluff, and things kind of collapse there, right? And he says, you have to leave, you have to break her heart. He does those things. The sister murders him. Next thing you know, she's falling into his arms, and off they go. And then the second half of the movie is like, now we're in the haunted mansion, and it was sort of like almost two different books in the same set in the same time period, but of different genres. And in the beginning, we get a ghost thing as a hook, but then there's nothing else about ghosts until we get up to Crimson Peak.
Right. Did you find the scene where the father is killed really shocking? That just, you don't really have anything violent, and then it's just like wham. I thought that was pretty.
I guess I did. I guess the brutality of it felt very closer to Tarantino than Del Toro. Yeah. Bashes his head against a porcelain sink in the corner until the corner of the sink cracks off, like wham, wham, wham. Kind of.
That's one of those things where
his head. Yeah.
That's one of those movie, almost kind of a trope thing where I wonder, you see fight scenes where they take somebody and, they're in a bathroom and they smash their head against a urinal and it busts off or something. I wonder if you could hit, obviously it would, at least in this movie, it kills them, but action.
But would it break the urinal? You could
kill
kill somebody by slamming their head against the urinal, but would the urinal break? I mean, that's pretty serious.
That's the thing I wonder, or when they, smash somebody's head into a wall and bust a hole in the wall and stuff. But it's like, could a human skull actually do that?
Well, it's one thing if it's drywall, right?
Right,
so
right.
You go through the drywall, but inevitably they always punch through to the other side. And you're like, I guess if there's no insulation, I just thought, a wall isn't just stick frames with drywall. There's stuff in between.
I don't want to tell this story on the show, but when we finish, remind me to tell you a story about drywall.
Okay.
Along those lines. But that's one of those things it's kind of like, again, it's very cinematic, but it's kind of one of those things of like, when people get in a fight in a movie and they're just kicking each other in the face over and over again. And it's like, I've not been in a fight like that, but one kick with somebody, in your face with somebody's boot or whatever,
right,
and you probably would get back up,
No, it'd knock you out or give you a concussion. Some of these people come up and kick it like you're, field goal kicking a football.
Right.
And they get up and shake it off. And you're like, I don't, the people abuse each other horribly in films. Not just superhero films. Well, I mean, look at the Indiana Jones movies too, and then they put in all the sound effects where it's like, it's like it's not what it sounds like when you punch somebody. It doesn't make a sound. It's,
Yeah, exactly.
But so everything is heightened.
I've always wondered that it's like, could somebody actually hit a person's head on a porcelain sink and the sink break? I don't think that would happen. Yeah,
it's just the force it would take, right? And maybe she was furious. Maybe she has sort of supernatural rage, but this woman is maybe $120, maybe in her dress, and she's like, whoa, she hulks on him, puts his head through the corner of the sink.
Yeah.
Ay, Dios mío. And then they go and look at the body and he's all smushed up.
He's really, really messed up.
We don't see his ghost.
I would recommend this. I mean, especially if you like other Guillermo del Toro films, things like Pan's Labyrinth, and you haven't seen this, I would highly recommend it. There are definitely people, I think, if you're looking for some kind of a hardcore horror movie, this is not that. There's spooky elements to it and some bloody stuff, but it's more or less a mystery, ghost story, romance period piece.
I thought Pan's Labyrinth was a superior film to this. Yes. I thought it was more upsetting and I thought it was more inventive. I think it's not just because I saw Pan's Labyrinth first, but in my mind, when we were talking about Tim Burton and we did Edward Scissorhands, Pan's Labyrinth to me was this very clearly in focus vision of his aesthetic. Mm-hmm. And this has all the hallmarks of his aesthetic, but I didn't feel like there was any fat in Pan's Labyrinth, and this felt like there could be some trimming to this, and not just in time, but in excess, in a number of different choices across the board. And I'm not saying he was not deliberate about it, but maybe now that he's a filmmaker, he's indulging himself in a way that I don't think makes as lean an experience from the audience.
Yeah. Pan's Labyrinth is another one that I saw in the theater.
Yeah.
And it's a sad movie.
Very. There's a deep sadness in this one too.
Yeah.
For all the violence and fright, it ends up just feeling like really sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She doesn't get to be with her love. And I think that's a common theme. Even the Hellboy movies, both of them. There's a sadness to the loss, the awareness of the loss and his sense of having lost his family and his people, Hellboy. But I think that's a common theme with Del Toro.
Yeah, that's a good point. I would agree. The Hellboy movies, did you like them?
Yeah, I did.
Did you see the third one?
Yeah, I did.
That, he wasn't involved with it all. It was okay.
It was
okay.
I didn't. And
it wasn't.
I like
horrific.
David Harbour, but I don't think.
Oh yeah.
I just don't think it came together.
Mm-mm.
There were some effects in it that I liked, and I think Harbour did a good job, and it just didn't come together.
I
Ron
bet
Perlman,
this.
I mean, come on, that's a Hellboy. Like, that casting is perfect.
Oh,
How are you gonna fill those shoes? And this is no slight against Harbour, but it's kind of like recasting Han Solo. The fans are gonna be like, no.
And it's a shame, the first two, they just did okay money. They, it wasn't like they were massive hits because, Hellboy isn't Superman or Spider-Man. But my understanding is he wanted to do another one.
Oh.
And the studio, again, it comes down to the thing of everything has to make $1 billion. And the studio was like, no, we're going to go another direction. And then he wins the Academy Award for Best Picture. And now he has these deals with Netflix, and because of that, like people started throwing money at him, and I'm sure the studio was like, "Damn it, we should have let." It's like, wow, we could have been like, Hellboy from the guy who won the Oscar for Best Picture.
Exactly.
That doesn't happen a lot with superhero movies.
Netflix is probably a better fit for him though, because they have the money to throw at more fringe feeling stuff.
Right.
And the studios don't risk that as often, right? I mean, they're not thinking about audiences that are willing to, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
You want to go and see a property you can get your head around and enjoy your popcorn. And if you really love it, go see it again or go see it a third time.
That's been one of the problems with him, is most of his movies have not made a lot of money. For whatever reason, The Shape of Water, critics liked it obviously because it won Best Picture, and audiences seem to like it as well. But yeah, Netflix, I think, is a better Netflix or whatever streaming service, he would get involved with. And he's producing a lot of stuff. He's a bit like Tarantino, where he has a lot of projects that he's always talking about and gets involved in, and a lot of them fall through. Like, I don't know if you saw any of, there was talk of Tarantino doing a Star Trek movie.
Oh, I heard a mumble about that.
And it's just like, just let him do it. Just be like, here's a bunch of money, make a Star Trek movie.
It'll be interesting.
It seems like, it seems like, and I think he was going to make it rated R, which, isn't really necessary with Star Trek, but.
No, I mean, I feel like at that point, I would say, why do you want to make a Star Trek movie? Like, I'm not saying don't, or it'll be bad. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Why do you want to make a Star Trek movie? It is so PG in my mind. It's such a nerdy academic undertaking. I love it. I love Star Trek, but even the newer ones with J.J. Abrams, those are at least PG-13, right? I mean, people get sucked out into space and kill each other, and they're like more legit action movies. And I enjoy those movies. Mm-hmm. But if you go back to the original Roddenberry Star Trek TV show, it was G. I mean, there was no, you know what I mean? People would get zapped with a ray of light and they'd fall down. And you'd be like, oh no, he's dead. If that was upsetting to you, that's as bad as it got, but.
Right. And I don't know exactly, I've just read a little bit about it. So maybe he lost interest in it. I don't know if it was the studio, but I feel like that's one of those things where a director like Quentin Tarantino, if he's like, hey, I want to do a Star Trek, or hey, I want to do the next Star Wars or whatever, you just say, okay, how much money do you need? Let's do it.
Now, though, with those properties, I think that the studios, they're their tent poles and they are protective of it.
Yeah.
So Disney, as crazy as they're going with the Star Wars thing now, I think they have a lot of meetings about the direction they want to, branch that out into.
Did you see that they were going to do like Rogue Squadron or something like that was going to be a Star Wars just about the pilots, and that one seems to have kind of fallen through. That was going to be one of the next.
No, but didn't in The Mandalorian or something, wasn't there a couple of like Rogue Squadron pilots that sort of on the one on the ice planet, they either sort of chase him in there or they pull him out, and I felt that was a little litmus test in the water to see how that played. Like, would you watch a show about these guys?
Yeah. Did
you feel that too?
Yeah.
The kind of calmer, there was kind of Ponch and John, they were kind of like, it was going around the back. All right, I got him here. Shh. It was like in the cockpit with these two.
That makes me think, have you seen the trailer for the Boba Fett show? Have you watched that?
No. I mean, is that not the one that the mini thing that was teased?
That's the one that's coming up.
No, but they have a trailer for it or something now?
There's a trailer for that, and there's a little teaser for the Obi-Wan Kenobi show too.
I've seen the
So,
teaser. It's about 6 seconds. I mean, there's nothing. It's a
yeah.
couple of different.
But there's one where there's it's like a few minutes long where it's more interviews than anything. Um it's Ewan McGregor, talking about it, and they're bringing Hayden Christensen back to be Darth
saw
Vader,
that.
which
Yeah, I
I'm
saw
not sure
that.
how that's going to work exactly, but that'll be interesting. And I feel like it's just Darth Vader is, if you're going to milk your property, keep using Darth Vader, basically.
Absolutely.
You can find, I still say, I know I've said this 100 times, I still say, I wish I could pitch a series or a movie to them where it's just Darth Vader. It's just, hey, it's the Darth Vader show. And it's just, there's some Jedi that are on various planets, and it's just him hunting them down. Basically.
They have to be thinking about it. There's a
I would
Darth
think
Vader
so.
comic book, right? That's a popular comic in the canon. So,
but a feature length or a series length thing of basically the last 5 or 10 minutes of Rogue One, where he's just wiping out people. Who wouldn't watch that? You don't even have to have a complex story.
Especially since I feel like the transition from Anakin to Darth Vader in those prequels was unsatisfying.
Yes.
Right. I mean, I really wanted to feel the Emperor's seduction of him and the way in which that vulnerable personality sort of was bent into that shape, culminating in his maiming and then the loss of Padme. And I didn't get that. So, I mean, it would be neat. You don't just, now he's in the suit. Now he's just this ultimate. No, there's still evolution to happen there, I feel. Yeah. And, it's a dark story. Like, remember James Earl Jones? That characterization of Darth Vader was scary. Like, he was not goofing around. He wasn't a nice guy. He's like, well, you got to be tough on these kids. No, he was. Everyone's terrified of Darth Vader.
And I think with Rogue One, I think whoever it was that directed that or wrote it was just like, hey, we want to remind everybody that Darth Vader used to be scary. When you first saw him up until Jedi, basically, you were afraid of him. And I think they recaptured that really well.
Yeah, it was delicate because you need to, I never thought of that character as an action, not hero, but an action movie character, because he was so big and stiff and still, he didn't run, and it played like, because he can't be bothered to hurry, but it also a little bit looked like, oh, well, the actor playing him is too big to run. Like, he can't run for some reason, it sort of just was like, the suit is incredibly tight, but there was this power in that restraint of I don't need to hurry. I'm Darth Vader. I'll get you. I can crush you with my mind, One of my favorite I imagine scenes also, in cinema is that I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Oh yeah. And I think that's one of those things that we saw later with the prequels, that was a bit of a happy accident, where almost like Jaws, the shark not working in Jaws, with Vader, you could see in the prequels what Lucas wanted the Jedi to be, where you have Yoda jumping around, and spinning and all that kind of stuff. And I think if Lucas had the technology in 1977 to have Vader flipping around in the air and doing somersaults and everything, he probably would have.
Too.
And I think it was a great case of the technology, the limits of the technology making it actually better.
But I love that Vader in that original thing he's a big Frankenstein character.
Yeah.
He's he looks 8 feet tall, and he's sort of stiff and slow. And the vocal performance that James Earl Jones gives it proves that he's intelligent. He's not slow-minded. He just seems like this big imposing thing. And you're like, your first impulse as a child watching it is, oh, he couldn't catch me. And then you think, oh, he doesn't need to. He doesn't need to catch me. He can just, it's Frankenstein that you don't have a chance of running. You could run away from Frankenstein, but you can't run away from Darth Vader because he just zaps you with his mind.
Exactly.
And then he cuts you with this laser sword.
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
Yep. Crimson Peak, ladies and gentlemen.
Crimson Peak. Yeah. Circle back to Crimson Peak. I know we've gotten far, but I guess we didn't have a lot to say about this one.
We talked about it. I don't know.
Good.
I mean, sometimes we talk for an hour about the movie. Sometimes we talk for half an hour about the movie. We then talk about other stuff.
Have you watched anything else recently that captured your attention, your imagination?
I haven't really. I haven't been doing a lot of watching of stuff.
I watched the first episode of the Blade Runner show that's on Adult Swim.
How is it?
It's good. So as
animated, it's all animated, right?
It's animated, and I am not a giant computer animation fan. I definitely there's I don't know if they've released any more, but I think they did the thing that they're kind of commonly doing now, where they'll release a couple of episodes. If it's something where they're not going to dump them all at once, they release a couple of episodes. And I've only watched the first one though, and I enjoyed it because that Blade Runner universe I think is really cool, and they do a good job of. So it's totally new characters that we're not familiar with, but they do a good job of doing some nods to the original film without hitting you over the head with it.
When is it in the Blade Runner timeline? I mean, is it Decker, or is it old Decker, or is it later than that, or is it earlier than that?
I think it's so Decker's what, like 2019 or something like that, or 20. So
Blade Runner was 2019, and then 2049 was the second.
I think this, as I recall, I think it was 2035, I believe. So it's kind of in the middle, I think. I don't quote me on that, but my only criticism of it would be with that computer animation, it feels a bit like you're watching it's like video game cutscenes. It had that feeling to me, where it's like you're just watching scenes from a video game. And some of the voice acting, I don't know if it originally was, it's definitely a Japanese production. Because I watched, they also had a making of thing where you can, there's interviews with the creators, and they're all Japanese. And so I don't know if the dialogue was originally recorded in Japanese and then they dubbed it, but some of the voice acting feels kind of video game like. If it were recorded in Japanese, I'd rather just be Japanese with subtitles, honestly, because like I say, the voice acting is, and some of it is not super great. But I mean, I don't know how many episodes it is, but I'll watch the rest of it.
Is the voice acting done by anybody known?
I didn't look it up, but I didn't recognize any of the voices, so I don't know if it's anybody.
Sometimes it's it's written in Japanese, and then they translate it to English, and the translation is a little stiff. And then they get a day player in. They get people in rather than hiring, the voices you might be familiar with. They hire cheaper talent. And I don't mean to cast any aspersions on cheaper talent per se, but it's hurried, it's rushed. So they get the script and they do it, and then they get paid and they go home, and then there isn't any time for the material to marinate, and they don't do it together. You're not in a studio acting with other people. You get male voice one, he might do 3 people, and you get female voice one, and she might do 3 people, and then there's another guy and another girl, and that's the whole cast.
Right.
So it's like there's might even be scenes when you're acting opposite yourself, doing 2 different voices separately. And it just creates a kind of a, all that considered, people are very good at it. But it does, when you're used to watching a movie like Blade Runner, where the performers are performing together and there's a rehearsal process and they were a part of the whole deal. You know, the person hasn't even always seen they don't always show you what you're recording.
Some of the actors are Asian and I don't recognize them, but then there's like Wes Bentley is in it. And I never know how to pronounce this guy's name, Josh Duhamel, Duhamel. I don't know how you pronounce that guy's name, but so yeah, it's a mixture of I guess Japanese actors and American actors. So maybe that's part of why it seems a little bit weird. But it's 13 episodes. I thought maybe it was going to be like a 6-episode thing, but and it only has 277 ratings on IMDb with a 5.6, which I would rate it higher than that, but I it's not amazing, but I like Blade Runner, so yeah, I think I would recommend,
check it out one evening.
I would recommend it, and they're only 22-minute episodes.
Yeah,
so
I have been watching more of the Venture Brothers. I've been enjoying that.
How good.
It does get, even halfway through season 1, that's already started to get better and better. Like it finds its ceilings quickly.
You get to where the animation gets really good, and that was the only. I mean, it wasn't their fault, but that was the only kind of, it's great, I think, to be able to just watch it all at once, because it started in like 2000 or something like that and ran, I mean, it was almost like 15, 20 years, because it would take them, a season would come out and they'd be like, okay, the next season is in 3 years, because I think it was just so difficult to make. But I'm sure you're probably seeing there's references to so many things, and it's really dense writing, for an animated show.
Simpler early on. Early on, they're just having a lot more genre fun with, certainly in the pilot, they're just poking a lot of fun at period tropes. And, he creates a weapon that he has he's displaying at the World's Fair, and it's clearly a laser, that he has mounted up, and for whatever reason the target is a little model of a city, and he fires and it just obliterates the city, and there's a general right there at his sleeve like, we're interested in purchasing your technology. And he's just like, I don't know why the military would be interested in this, what applications the military would have for this, but hey, your money's green. And they're just having fun with the very broad strokes of like the time period and gender roles. And then, but it starts to subvert even itself. I'm maybe 6 or 7 episodes in, and it's already getting richer as this all starts to marinate. And I'm excited to see it keep going, because it's already thoroughly enjoyable.
Good. Yeah. That's a show I would definitely think you would like. And that's a show with fantastic voice acting.
Yeah.
So like Brock, who is whatever that guy's name is, who was the Tick, and was on Putty on Seinfeld and everything.
Yeah.
That guy's awesome.
Kind of talks like this.
Yeah. He's just awesome. And I don't know, his delivery is just so perfect. And I don't know, that's a show that I just need to go back and start at the beginning, just rewatch all of it, because it's so rewatchable. But have you gotten into, like, is there Dr. Girlfriend in it? And Phantom Dr. Limb? Girlfriend. Have you seen Phantom Limb?
I told you I didn't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
I love the villains in it. They're such head cases.
Yeah.
The Monarch. What a weirdo. It's so good.
Yeah. I like Dr. Phantom Limb.
She's got the pillbox cap. She looks like Jackie O, basically.
And
I don't understand why you're constantly bothering me about this.
That's perfect. That's a spot on.
That's great.
Oh, and the guy that's like Doctor Strange, has he been in any episodes?
Yes.
Yeah.
And his emo daughter, like his.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a guy who's like Blade and like a
Yeah, it's
70s
great.
Blade. Yeah. Yeah,
It's great. So that's been a lot of fun. I mean, that's hardly a new thing. What do we want to do for next time?
so we talked about Angel.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm interested to see that one. It's got a salacious looking cover, but you said you saw it and it was surprising in a number of ways.
Yeah.
That
I
I
won't
thought were
spoil it, but
interesting.
yeah, it's very different than because it was one of those films. We can get into this next week, but that as a kid, I always, again, the salacious cover art, and I always thought this movie was a movie that I just always thought, like, that's going to be really nasty and, disturbing. And spoiler alert, it's kind of not. In ways it is. But anyway, that is available. If anybody wants to watch it and not pay for it, it's on Tubi, Tubi with ads. So that's how I watched it. And there are sequels too, which I don't think the sequels are too great, but it's I think there will be a lot to talk about with this one. It's an interesting film that subverts your expectations, I would say.
So let's do that for next time. And then down the road, we've talked about Aronofsky. We talked about what was the other one we just said? Pan's Labyrinth. We were going to do
Pan's Labyrinth.
We were going to do Pan's
There's some
Labyrinth.
other. So we kind of
Shape of Water.
Shape of Water. Yeah.
Although we could do Pan's Labyrinth. Pan's is great. It's a great movie. It almost doesn't deserve our. I mean, we do all different kinds of movies, but Pan's Labyrinth is just like that's
highbrow.
It's a great movie. Yeah.
Yeah. For people who haven't watched or listened, we kind of vacillate between some really bad stuff sometimes and some highbrow things on occasion. So we're all over the place.
Yes. We've done Dune twice.
We did The Lighthouse. So we've done some very artsy things, and then this movie that we're going to do next week is not artsy.
Not artsy. Okay, Chris and Chris Talk Movies at gmail.com. We are on YouTube. We're on your podcast thingamajigger.
Mm-hmm.
We're on the socials. You can tweet at us or chirp at us or email us or
whatever you feel
at
like.
Us. Exactly. We're pretty much there. And you can say, this show is great. And we'll say, thanks, man. That's nice to hear. And you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, whether you watch anything or not. And that would help us get to
a lot.
That would help us a lot. So do that, please. And once you're subscribed, why don't you watch the shows as well?
Exactly. And we add videos every week and podcasts every week. So
yeah, we got a pretty good amount of content now that we've been doing this for a while.
I'm adding a couple of videos a week because we're going back and putting old stuff up on YouTube. So I'm adding a couple of videos a week. So
That's
a very nice. Today, Flash Gordon went up on YouTube.
Oh, Flash. The audio, if I remember correctly, my audio isn't all that great on Flash Gordon, but we had a lively conversation about it.
Yes, I believe so.
Great. Well, it's always a pleasure. We're going to watch Angel for next time, which is
1983, I think.
83, right. Such an interesting time for movies. Those early 80s were just crazy bonkers. Excuse me. Crimson Peak. Indeed. Check it out. It's
on Netflix.
So there you go. And anything else before we sign off?
No, I think that's it.
Great night for me either. We will talk to you next week.